Hey everyone, welcome back to CryptoCache. Thank you so much for joining me here. I hope you're having an amazing day. We're going to take a quick look at Request Network, see kind of what's going on here, and obviously, if you are new to the channel, not a financial advisor, just love teaching people how to trade, I have a trading community if you want to become a better trader, and also rolling out with a Trading Academy month end to help you from start to finish become a better trader. So definitely good stuff there. Be on the lookout for that. Right now with Request Network, just kind of throw it out there. First and foremost, it's the only green candlestick here today in the sea of red because Bitcoin is selling off as anticipated. It's not terrible, of course, but we're down to like 42,200 in that range there, and we're kind of expecting a downside this week. Again, that's what I'm expecting just based on the overall sentiment. Now, we're not here for Bitcoin. I'll make a separate video for that. However, with Request, I got a lot of requests here, no pun intended, to find out what's going on, why we spiked up here today. Now, I can't tell you that specifically. That's usually oftentimes a fundamental catalyst, something we don't typically see, probably news related. But the good news is here we can kind of anticipate where it's going to go next, in most cases with Fibonacci retracement levels, so we'll just go ahead and address that. We'll look at a couple other things first as well. We're under the 50-day simple moving average and above the 200, so the 50 is probably going to work as a resistance. So the likelihood of Request Network closing above 36 cents is pretty low, or at least, correction, more so above 40 cents, right? Because 40 is essentially going to be a major Fibonacci retracement level, as well as the fact that the 50 is working its way down, right? So those are just things you want to kind of pay attention to. RSI is back up over 70, correction, up over 50, under 70 on the one-day chart, which is also a good sign too, back in bullish territory. Okay, so the key takeaway here though is that the price hopefully should not retrace much lower. If it does, then we might be back under 50 on the RSI, but being above 50 on the RSI is extremely helpful. Just note this one-day candlestick hasn't closed yet, a little premature. We've got somewhere in the range of 8 hours left of trading in this cycle. Also bear in mind too that with Bitcoin selling off a little bit here in the recent past, I think it's down about 1,000 roughly in the last, I don't know, what would that be, maybe 1 or 2%, just in the last 8 hours. Request Network could be retracing because of that. We'll look at smaller time frames to identify, but we do have a MACD convergence here, so big picture macro looks very, very good for Request. Okay, so just keep that in the forefront of your mind. We're looking good on the big picture for Request Network. And let's take a look at this here too and see how much volume we have. Tremendous amount of volume increase. We can see that there is even a lot of volume here as well in the second candlestick here, right after that immediate pump, and that kind of just proves that we have a lot of bullish convergence. In other words, the bulls are here to play, right? So obviously we went from low volume to high volume, but the volume hasn't tapered off in the last 12 hours. It's a very good sign. So that ultimately tells me that we should expect to see Request Network, at the very least, probably go sideways. It shouldn't come any lower than 34, right around 35 cents is a round number, okay? So good stuff there. We're also up over both moving averages. RSI is over 70. I don't love that, but it's not terrible either. In most cases, the common rule of thumb is to sell or to trim your position when the RSI comes back down. Check my RSI video out. Of course, I have a kind of a best practice for RSI, specifically more so when it hits 70 and what to do with it, because you don't just sell as soon as the price comes up over 70. You more so want to consider selling or trimming on the way back down when the RSI is coming closer to 70 in a downward movement, right? Which we're seeing right now. So right now, I do see kind of a consideration to maybe consider trimming some of your position if you have one. Obviously, it depends on your overall goal though. Request Network's big picture for you. You just want to go ahead and hold on to that for a long time. Don't worry about it. Not a big deal. But if it is something that you are just kind of just say day trading, perhaps you got in recently and you got a nice little 2x or whatever the case is, then you might want to consider, trimming some of your position because it's a bit on the overextended side. That's the concept. But bottom line here is we've got nothing but good signs here. We are just a bit on the overextended side. One thing to note too, though, with TD sequential is going to be the number's going to be off a little bit. We're at a 6 right now out of a potential of 9. In other words, it takes the fourth previous candlestick and continues to count upwards from there. So hypothetically, we have about 3 more 4-hour candlesticks, so 12 hours worth of continuation to the upside. Is that going to happen? I think probably not, just based on the fact that we are well outside of standard deviation and the price is way too high at this point. For that, if you consider that, right? Because take a look at this here, guy. This guy right there, 36% increase in 4 hours. That's a lot of movement in a short amount of time. And it continued effectively to increase even higher, not 8 hours later. Okay, so we got to understand that, kind of think about, okay, well, it's pushed really hard. Is the likelihood of it coming back down very high? And I think it is higher than it is, than the price would continue to increase, right? So again, you can only go up so fast, so quickly. And I think that's just a lot of volume, a lot of increase, and it's going to have to start tapering off a little bit, especially with Bitcoin selling off. And look at this here. This is actually synonymous with Bitcoin's behavior right now. Last 4 hours has been fairly red for Bitcoin, and we see a nice continuation of the downside here. So we look at TD sequential, we can see we got a reset down to a 5, up to a 4, and we're going to probably see this period of consolidation. So it could literally continue to bounce between these three channels for a little while until it establishes a price. Where it will reside, it's hard to say, but I can tell you based on what we've seen here so far, there's a lot more volume accumulation right between, actually, hold on, instead of speculating, let's actually pull it up. There's a lot more volume accumulation right around 35 cents. So, right here, it would be safe to presume that the price will probably kind of continue into this channel eventually. That's probably a strong likelihood based on the strong amount of volume. But the good news is with us having more volume here, the likelihood of the price bouncing off this support level is fairly high. Or if nothing else, it could come down here and bounce, right? So I do think that the bottom here for Request Network would be somewhere in the range of about 35 cents. Okay, just as a good round number for you. So that is good sign. That's very, very good. It's very healthy. But if we take a look at the the volume weighted average price, for example, you can see how far outside the standard deviation lines the price has traveled. And this is not a good sign. When you see this, there's always a correction that follows, always a correction that follows. It's too high, too fast, and it's just not healthy. And when we look at the 15-minute chart, you can see the same thing as well, a little bit more clear, where we got a lot of volume right here, which is perfectly fine, but it has to come back down and correct itself. That's where Bollinger Bands are very helpful too. A lot of people prefer to use that. I like the volume weighted average price on shorter time frames to identify it, but of course, depends on your trading style, right? Your day trading, I think the VWAP is probably a lot more effective. Bollinger Bands probably perhaps a little bit better on the larger time frames, maybe the 4 hour. But in this scenario, this kind of gives us that standard deviation. Anything that goes up above has to come back down. Try to think of like a flotation device. If you ever tried to hold something, a full, like an empty bottle of water that's just full of air underwater, it's going to surface, right? It's just inevitability. In this case, kind of the inverse applies, where if it goes too high, it's going to have to come back down and essentially submerge or correct itself. That's what we're seeing here. Okay, so again, not terrible. It just kind of leads to this sporadic, interesting behavior. So I think that it's pretty likely we're going to see a price consolidation between 34.5 and 36.5. So again, average true range, I would say, is closer to about 35 cents as a realistic estimate of where this is going to go. Now, big picture, where could this go? Hypothetically, we have another increase like this, and we can see the amount of volume, of course. It's done a lot before in the past. This is low volume compared to what it's done previously. Well, if we're to have another volume spike and the price were to continue to increase, 59 cents is a very strong likelihood in the next couple of days or couple of weeks. And I say that because it has sporadic behavior in a sense. And if you look at its history, though, just bear this in mind, it has very large candle wicks. Okay, so most coins that have a tendency of wicking up very high know that they're likely to come back down too, right? So in other words, that whole concept of what goes up must come down, the price is likely to come down and consolidate even lower than the expectation of 35 cents. I'm just expecting or anticipating that because there's a lot of volume accumulation at 35 cents, and that's creating a support level in the short term. But in the long term, we truly do not know. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of volume that's much higher than the current price action, and I'm willing to guess that we're going to see, that's probably created a strong resistance there, right? You see that 40 cents right there, right where the volume profile is at. That's causing the price kind of ceiling out, so to speak. It hit its ceiling, couldn't come back, couldn't go further. So there's a lot of things here, a lot of mitigating factors that are keeping the price down, but also some complementing factors on the short term. I do think 35 cents would probably be the lowest at this immediate future. And I do think that also 59 cents is a realistic price estimate in the next, I would say, more so couple of weeks or a couple of months, just to be safe and conservative, because again, these candle wicks tell us that it's probably not going to stay up for very long. It might come back down, it might continue to increase slowly, but it'll keep wicking up and wicking down and essentially just kind of drawing dead, so to speak. Either way, it should progress upwards over time, but don't expect it to be, to the moon, so to speak, tomorrow. Again, it's still likelihood, right? We gotta understand that that's a possibility. But again, I think that was kind of an anomaly we saw here on the 25th of November, and I don't think we're going to see that again. If we do, it'd be kind of more of a wild card, right? We would much rather go with the best anticipation and the realistic scenario here based on its history. I don't think it's going to hit 59 cents in the immediate future. I think 2 weeks to 2 months would be a better, more conservative estimate there. But again, I still think the likelihood of it coming up versus coming down is very high, considering the amount of volume profile and obviously the fact that it shouldn't go much lower. So all good stuff here for Request Network. I like it. I'm bullish on Request in the general sense of things. I would just say that it's a volatile coin. You want to be cautious with coins like this. All right, hopefully you learned a thing or two here today, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. If you're not currently a community member, consider subscribing. Love to get to know you better and work with you there. And obviously, check out my Trading Academy month end. We'll be actually transitioning to a website platform away from Patreon to make it much more convenient and user-friendly for our members. So awesome stuff. I deeply appreciate all of my current members too. You're amazing. Thank you so much for your support, and we'll look forward to seeing you next video. Have a great rest of your day. See you soon.